right, everyone. I just wanted to say thank you for being here. Return to the King podcast. Myself, Joe Moreau, we got the guys from Avoiding Babylon here. We're grateful to have you here to get to know you guys a little bit. We hope it'll be a reoccurring thing where we can just have some fraternal conversations and get to know each other and grow in the faith. Sorry for anyone who was waiting on our YouTube Live. We had some complications just trying to get things started. We're not the most technologically savvy, and we're relatively new to this
Yeah.
whole thing. So thank you for bearing with us, and we'll have this up on YouTube soon, so you guys can get a chance to hear the conversation. So yeah, Joe, I guess I'll kick things off. We really just I've been watching a lot of your podcasts, and you guys are great, and we're excited to hear some things about you. Um, I really wanted to start off with just getting a little bit of your background. Where you guys are from, how you were raised, whether you were raised. I believe you're both cradle Catholics, but could be wrong. But just a little bit about like your family life, your the way you were raised in the faith. I'm assuming you're both raised in the Novus Ordo, like all of us.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
just I guess some of your.
Rob,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Rob, you kick it off. You go first because I always hog the conversation. I want you to go first this time.
Okay, well, so I live in Minnesota. I'm from Minnesota. I am a cradle Catholic, born and raised. Was raised in the Novus Ordo, but the church I was raised at, I've since learned was actually pretty traditional. They were a church that had a TLM going back to like the bad old days of like the 80s, right when the adult first came to be. So the parish itself was pretty traditional. It was really kind of bifurcated. You had the Novus Ordo side and the Latin Mass side, and the two never really mixed for at all. So I didn't know anyone on the Latin Mass side. Never went to a Latin Mass. Really knew nothing about it, and honestly was pretty much taught and told that it was the same thing, just in Latin. So never felt a need to explore it growing up.
Was it
But
the same priest, Rob?
same priest, yeah, same priest
Okay.
did both.
Oh wow.
And our priest was honestly amazing. I mean, he's a man I looked up to a ton. I was an altar server growing up. I served mass all the time, including a lot of daily masses in the summer and stuff like that. So our priest was really, really, really good, was really faithful. Our religious ed was done by two old Benedictine nuns. So honestly, it was way more solid than what I've learned most cradle Catholics grew up with.
Yeah.
So honestly, I was really, really blessed and lucky to have that, and it did really give me a good foundation. But as I got older in the teenage years in high school, more of the catechesis was more handed off to parents of other kids and things like that, especially getting ready for confirmation. And they started doing things with confirmation prep where we had to go to what is called net team.
Oh yeah, I used to go there too.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to do youth ministry, so I would take the teens there all the time.
Okay. Yeah. It for anyone who's not familiar with it, they're somewhat comparable to kind of like life teen style events. So we had to go to those once a month for confirmation prep. And then
Was it like, I mean, like it was praise and worship music, you'd have adoration, you'd have a speaker. Yeah.
yeah.
Rob loved it. You have no idea. He loved it. He was
Yeah.
like, he was so into it.
Yeah.
When I
So
did youth
yeah.
ministry, we took teens there all the time, and yeah, the teens loved it for sure. And they had me speak there a handful of times, like at the local ones, but yeah.
Yeah. So between that and then we had a Steubenville put on they travel across the country doing conferences, retreats more or less for confirmation. We had to go to that, and in just some of the practices and things I saw there were so discordant with the faith I was raised with. The more traditional, even if it was Novus Ordo, the more traditional sort of faith being compared to what we were being forced to experience for confirmation, it really just created a disconnect in my head. Like, how can we believe all these things that we say we believe and we're taught to believe, but then the practice and what we seem to be being pushed towards is entirely different. And that kind of stuck with me going into college. And, you know, as once it was no longer mandatory in a sense to go, I stopped going to mass and was away from the faith for about 10 years.
Wow.
And came back when my wife got pregnant with our firstborn. Realized needed to get serious about it again. So,
Man, that's crazy. Well, praise God for that, though.
mm-hmm.
You know, that the pregnancy is what got you thinking about the future and everything, the faith. That's awesome.
I would pay anything to see Rob at a life team, man. You have no idea. I want to see a young Rob praise and worship his hands up.
No. I was the one
stone
faced, visibly angry, you know, hands down, just upset.
You were doing the yes, Lord, yes, Lord, yes, yes,
no,
Lord,
okay.
amen.
Oh no.
Oh, I don't even know what you guys are talking about. This is amazing.
Do.
I want to learn this.
The world behind me. You didn't do that stuff?
Flashbacks, PTSD right there.
Or let the river flow. You didn't do that either? No.
Oh,
it's
man,
hard. You know, it's
were your parents raised Catholic, Rob?
My mom was. My mom grew up in the same parish I grew up in. Her parents were both, you know, very faithful Catholics. She was born in 1961, so she never remembered much of the Latin Mass, and even though she probably made her first communion, you know, in the old rite, but yeah, so she grew up Catholic. My dad grew up Lutheran and converted when he married my mom. But I would say he was very much a nominal Catholic, and my mom more or less, what kind of that whole generation seemed to be more or less nominally Catholic.
How are they now, Rob?
Who?
Your
My
parents?
Well, my mom, she's been away from the church for about 15 years now.
And your dad passed, right?
My dad passed last year. He had been away the same amount, basically, because they both kind of left the church when they got divorced.
Yeah.
My dad, though, I was able to get him last rites before he passed. So, and my mom now is she wants to come back and is working towards that. So,
oh wow, we have that in common. My dad passed away last year, also. My condolences. He received last rites also, but yeah, they were falling away pretty much. He came back to mass with me here and there when I started going to the Latin Mass. My mom's now become pretty traditional after, like, you know, coping with his death. I think it's been powerful for her getting back to the sacraments. So
yeah, that seems to have a similar effect on my mom too. So
pretty cool. Yeah, my upbringing was like, okay, so my mom is a very special person. My mom, even from when she was a kid, she, like, her parents were nominally Catholic at best. My mom would like walk to church when she was a kid by herself at like 10 years old. Like, my mom always had like a special relationship with God, you know? And I don't remember a time in my life where God wasn't always talked about. But when my parents were about in their like early 30s, I was probably about 8 years old. My dad wanted nothing to do with the faith. He thought my mom was nuts, but he, you know, he still loved her. But he's like, this woman's nuts with the God stuff. And my mom talked my dad into doing a trip to Medjugorje.
Oh, wow.
So they go to Medjugorje, and my dad comes back on fire for God. Like, he has this insane conversion while he's there. He comes back. He's playing music at the music ministry at the local parish. Like, they're going, my parents are in the charismatic renewal. My mom's speaking in tongues. I mean, the whole nine. They bring me to like retreats at Scranton University. And I mean, it was a very Catholic upbringing, like very Catholic upbringing. Then my dad kind of stopped going to mass when I was like 17. And he's never come, like, he'll go here and there, but he's never come back. My mom is still like full on, loves the Catholic faith. I have 8 siblings. I have 4 brothers, 4 sisters, no twins. I'm third of the 9. And same thing as Rob, pretty similar. Like, I grew up having the faith. I never didn't believe in God. Like I always had the faith. My mom always instilled in me like the Eucharist was real, and like they showed me Eucharistic miracles as a kid and a lot of Marian apparitions and stuff. And like that was really the stuff, like the incorruptible saints. That was the stuff that like helped me hold on to my faith. But same thing as him. You hit 18, girls are around, and you want to. It's not that you don't believe in God; it's you pretend he doesn't exist so that you can go and do whatever you want to do, and you just kind of don't acknowledge him.
He's far off, right? He's like,
yeah,
I'll worry about that when I'm 60, 70,
yeah,
80.
and there's a God. There's a God, but like
I'm 20, I'm invincible right now.
Yeah, let's not talk about that guy, you know. So it was more just living as though he didn't exist more than not believing that he existed. So that was, I would say, and I think Rob had a very similar experience. It wasn't that he didn't believe, it was just like out of sight, out of mind. It's a Adam hiding in the garden scenario, right? When you fall into mortal sin, it's you just, God, don't look at me, you know. I don't, you know, so you pretend he doesn't exist. So then but because I was away from the sacrament so long, my intellect was really not sharp at all. And I remember doubting the resurrection. And I was probably about 25, 26. And I was at I married a Lutheran girl. And funny enough, like I knew enough that even though I married a Lutheran girl, I had to get married in the Catholic Church. Yeah. So I had to get like a dispensation from my bishop, and she had to agree to raise the kids Catholic, but she didn't convert. Like it wasn't like she went through RCIA to get married or anything. But we got married at 22. And then around 27, I went to church with her at the Lutheran parish, and it was on Easter, and the pastor gave a sermon on the resurrection. And I remember going home, sitting out in front of my house, having a cigarette on my patio, on my porch in front. And I'm like, did Jesus really rise from the dead? Like maybe he didn't die on the cross and like they thought he did. Cause I was pretty mired in sin. Like I was doing drugs and I was pretty far off. And I went in the house, like before I went in the house, I just looked up and I said, God, if you exist and you're real, like you really have to prove yourself to me. Like I'm never going to be able to just make myself believe something that I don't. I mean, I know like you have to, you know, I know you exist, but like you really got to show me you exist. And I went in the house and I turned on Netflix. And it was Easter, and I'm flipping around Netflix, and in my previously watched, there was a documentary on the Shroud of Turin.
When you were 25, wasn't that like 30 years
27.
Ago?
It was it was like right when it just started.
Okay.
Maybe I was 30. Maybe I'm a little older than I'm thinking. It might have been. I might have my time period, but it was Netflix for sure.
A joke about you being older than that.
I mean, but you might be right. Like this might have been maybe 29. I don't know, whatever. So I go on Netflix, and in my previously watched, it was a documentary in the Shroud of Turin. I watched this documentary going in a skeptic and an agnostic, and when it was over, I was like, Jesus is real, and I was on fire for God. And that was
had you actually previously watched that, or was it just
that's why it was so weird
there?
Inexplicably in my previously watched. Wow. It was a very strange thing. Nobody else had my account. My kids were 3 and 2 years old. It was like, it wasn't like they watched it. My wife had no concern to watch it. And it was a very strange thing that it was in my previously watched. I remember freaking out about it. I was yelling at my wife. I'm like, who watched this? She's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, who watched this? It's in the previously watched. Who watched it? She's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Get out of here. And I watched it, and I went into that thing being like an agnostic, not really sure. And I came out of there like, oh, like that was it. And then I went down this like weird path of not even knowing there was a difference in Protestantism and Catholicism. And I'm listening to Protestant radio at work and stuff. And it wasn't until I heard a Protestant preacher say something anti-Catholic. And like he was like lambasting the Catholics. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm like, wait, I'm actually not, what's going on here? And I was so naive. I was like, I don't understand. Why can't Protestants and Catholics just forget all their differences and just be like, I didn't know anything, man. It was so bad, so cringe. And then I stumbled across Alex Jones, not the Alex Jones.
Oh, the pastor.
The pastor.
The one that converted.
I stumbled across. With the whole parish.
Yeah, a third of them.
Like I accidentally stumbled upon his conversion story, and he brings the whole parish in. And I go from him to then looking up Scott Hahn somehow. Yeah. Like I must have watched his conversion, and then I came across Scott Hahn's conversion, and that was a wrap. Well, next thing I know,
the Alex Jones one is emotional. The no price too high or something like that.
Okay, I've heard that one. You're right. Yeah, no
Yeah,
place
it's
too
He's a
hard.
black pastor, Rob. He took the
Yeah.
whole black church
No,
with him.
you're right. Yeah, I've listened to that one.
he even like gets emotional and cries about how painful it was for him to make the conversion. And a
Yeah.
third of his people came with him through RCIA and converted the same year on Easter Vigil. You know,
You think about how the miracle that is, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
to take a third of the congregation with you, like, and the other ones leave because he's getting too Catholic. But Rob, he starts like introducing the Eucharist every week, and he starts doing like all these things. I remember that conversion story so vividly. And it just like, I was like, oh my gosh, why was I never taught this stuff? Like, what's going on? And then when you hear Scott Hahn's conversion story, it was a wrap. So then I just started devouring Lighthouse Catholic Media content, right? So I was a Lighthouse Catholic Media, hermeneutic of continuity guy. I mean, I was that guy, you know.
I used to be I was a sales rep for them for about a year, Lighthouse Catholic Media, just going to different churches. Turning 42.
Oh, we're the same age. You born 82?
I'm born 81.
81? I say I'm born 82, so we're a couple months apart.
Nice.
How about you, Vic? How old are you?
I'm 35. I was born in 88.
So
same here. 88.
You got this is funny. You guys are like you guys are bizarro world avoiding Babylon, man. That's pretty funny. So
I think we're the bizarro world. I'm pretty sure.
How did you guys meet?
Me and Victor, I'm close friends with his girlfriend, who's Nina Leone. I met Nina because she was a Protestant. We knew her through Instagram, and she was part of the Truther community. And then she was going through a conversion herself to the Christian faith. We started chatting, her and I was kind of there step by step as she went full on into the Catholic Church and let all of her followers know. Well, then she ended up converting her personal account into Return of the King, which we have now, and started just talking completely about the Catholic Church. So she and I were friends, and then she is the one that met Victor. And, Victor's, already strong, firm in his faith, and so she kind of introduced us, brought him into the fold, and now he's like one of the main members of Return of the King. So, yeah.
How long you been dating her?
Good question. 7 months? Put me on the spot.
Yeah.
And I told you got to stop asking questions like that. That's dangerous.
She marriage material or what?
I think so.
No way, she's not going to hear this.
If it was live, she'd be texting me right now.
I'm just playing around, man.
If she was here,
I'm
she'd
just
be
teasing.
texting.
Yeah, good we're not live. I have time to just come up with a story. No.
Listen, I don't know what you're waiting for, bro. You think you can do better? That was dude. I'll go. Well, listen to me. My wife gets so mad at me. We'll go out to eat, and I'll see like a boyfriend and girlfriend at if we're out, and I'll be like, "Oh, you guys married? No, we're not married." I'm like, "What do you think you can do better?" And the girl gets I'm like, bro, what are you waiting for? Look at why are you not getting married? Half the time the girl is like, you're amazing. I'm inviting you to the wedding when he proposes. My wife gets mortified. She hates it. But all right. So you guys really just very recently though got started doing this together then.
Well,
podcast
I was doing the podcast, prior to knowing Victor. Nina and I did the podcast with a couple other people. Victor, I basically met you around Christmas of last year, around that time. And
that's when we met, Christmas Day, actually. That's when Nina and I.
Yeah. So.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So Rob and I, my channel started off, it was just me. And it started off from the pandemic. My first video was about the vaccine mandate. And I was just like.
First video was marriage advice.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, that's right. My first video was marriage advice, and then the second video was the just discussing the mandate and the need to just I will not cave on this thing. And that was basically but then I was trying different things that I did a couple of videos on typology, and it was I felt awkward being on camera by myself. I didn't like it. So then my cousin's wife sent me this Catholic trivia game. For Christmas, she bought me this Catholic trivia game, or maybe my birthday or something. And I'm like, I'm going to do Catholic trivia. That's what I'll do on the channel. So I announced on Twitter, I'm like, I'm going to do Catholic trivia. Does anybody want to play? And Rob's wife and me were friends on Twitter, and she volunteers Rob, and she goes, Rob, you're doing trivia. And he's like,
it's funny because we had just bought that exact same trivia game to play on our long car rides to the Latin Mass.
So
Nice.
Rob falls asleep in the car if he's driving. Like he'll fall asleep. So he has to constantly
It's
be
true.
like thinking of something. He can't
Yep.
just like if Hope's not paying attention, he'll doze off and go up the road. So he would make
Why
Hope
are
read
you
him the
laughing
trivia
at that?
questions. You're sick. How are you gonna do that? Put the music on.
I'm sick. You're sick. You're laughing at
Yeah, you maniac. You're gonna kill your family if you don't do trivia in the car. What's wrong
Still
with
better
you?
than a woman driving.
It is 100%. Absolutely. So, yeah, he would have his wife read him the trivia. So, Rob comes on. He's the first guest on the trivia show. And I had, there's a guy, Stephen Garone runs a channel called Catholic Comedy. So, Stephen's like, oh, I'm amazing at trivia. I'll come on. And he comes on. And it's him and Rob. Stephen was awful. It was so bad. If anybody ever goes back and watches that first trivia episode, it's the funniest thing. Stephen, it's like every question I ask Rob, Rob gets it, and Stephen's just like, guys, it's
His
the
wife,
funniest
Allison
thing.
Jerome, the Latin mass photographer, is that his wife?
Nah, wait. Oh, is it? I don't think so.
Who?
Are they related? The Latin mass photographer on Instagram, I think it's Allison. I think GIRO.
I don't think. Nah, I don't think so.
No, his wife's name
Nah.
is Kayla.
Yeah, Kayla. So so I had such a good time and good chemistry with Rob so we did the show that night. There was
On a
great
Friday night.
interaction on the audience. It was my first live show. What'd you say, Rob?
I know where you're going with this. That was
Yeah,
a Friday night.
It was a Friday night. We did the trivia. It was the first time we did a live show, and there was like 25 people in the chat having fun playing trivia with us. And I was like, I went to bed that night, and I was just like, I don't want to do this alone. And I called him at like 7 a.m. my time, which is
Saturday.
6 a.m. his time, because he's in a different time zone. He's in Minnesota. I'm in New York. And I'm like, dude, because he actually mentioned to me after the show, he was like, yeah, I think I might start a channel myself. So I called him that next morning. I'm like, don't start your own channel. Just come and do this with me. I'm like, I just started. I had like 300 subscribers, like 250 subscribers or something. I was like, just
268.
268 when Rob joined the channel. I'm like, dude, I just started this thing. Like, it was never like a you joined my channel thing from the first minute, though. I was like, listen, I'm like, come on, and I want you to care as much about this as I do. Like, we are, like, from day one, it was like, you're 50-50 partners in this with me. You have just as much to care about this thing growing as I do. Like, it was never like this weird thing or anything. Me and him have never had a conversation about whose responsibilities are what.
Nope,
Never
it's
once.
Supernatural.
It's been because Rob has very specific talents and I have different talents. And it's like the two of us have such a great rapport when it comes to that stuff. It's like Rob's definitely way more technical and has more of an analytical way of thinking than I do. Everything just flies out of my mouth off the cuff, but I'm very good at like bugging people to come on the show. And Rob's not like, he doesn't like making people feel awkward where I'm just like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'll bug anybody, right? So from day one, it was just a very natural division of duties. Like we never have one conversation. I kind of do what I do on my end, and Rob does what he does on his end. And we've watched it just go from this little thing of 250 subs to we got Taylor Marshall to come on one time, and that kind of blew things up. Then I had Father Isaac on. Father Isaac, I invited him over to my house for dinner. And
I saw that on your
in-person
Instagram that you posted that.
Yeah.
It was just such a cool thing to have. I mean, we all came to the faith watching Father Isaac, right? Like he's like a pillar of traditionalism, you know. Next, I got to get Father Ripperger. I haven't been able to get in touch with him yet.
You guys are having a summit in the Poconos or where? In Pennsylvania, I heard.
Yeah, that's why. Where do you guys live?
I'm in Maryland, so I can drive up.
I'm out in crummy California.
Ooh.
Oh, you're not coming, but Victor, if you want to come, you're more than welcome. So what it is my uncle has it's like a 7,000 square foot house in the Poconos. It's a summer house. He's not going to be there. I asked him if I could go up with a couple of buddies we're going to probably hit the Padre Pio Shrine in PA. He's got quads up there and all this stuff. So I'm like, we got about 10 of us going. So if you want to come, you're more than welcome. I'll text you the dates and the address.
I'd love to come up. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, it's so important for guys to do stuff like that, to just get guys together and be men without the wives around. And it's especially important for me with Rob. Like I want to, like we talk every day, but like it's very different than meeting in person. Like our first meeting in person, we were doing it how long were we doing it for? We were doing it for like 3 months, maybe.
Well, so that was in October, and our first video was at the end of March, so it was really 6 months.
Yeah, so about the 6 month mark, Matt Frad was having
He opened a cigar
his
bar.
cigar lounge opening. So he was doing the Chesterton Cigar Lounge opening. And I'm like, we're gonna meet up. I'm like, it's like a 13-hour drive from me. It was like a 20-hour drive from you, right?
Yeah.
And we were friends with another podcast, these Jason and Mark. It's called Tex Cathedra now. Had a different name before that. But we just became friends in a group text. I met them through trivia also. It was a very like organic way we all met. And we're like, dude, let's just do a meetup. And we all went to Steubenville. Rob, the day of, calls me and he goes, dude, I can't come.
The day before. The day I would start driving.
Yeah. He's like, I don't think I can make it. I'm like, what do you mean you can't make it? He's like, I got too much stuff to do at work. He's like, I can't spend 20 hours driving there and 20 hours driving home. It was just too much. So me and the other guys chipped in and we got Rob a plane ticket and he flew in. It was like, we were like, let's just get everybody here. We had such a fun time because they have that First Fridays festival there. And there was like live music and stuff. And like we were going around. I was trying to pick fights with Protestants while we were there. It was a great time, man. But
he's not even joking.
Since we did that last October, I said once a year we got to do a meetup. So Jason's coming in from Texas. Mark can't make it this year, but Jason's coming in from Texas. Rob's coming in from Minnesota, and we're doing a meetup this year. So we're going to at least do once a year. We're going to try and do a meetup.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Are you guys going to podcast while you're there, or just going to be?
I'm sure, yeah, because it's like Enoch's coming, Father Dave Nix is coming. We invited a couple other guests too. I can't remember everybody off the top of my head, but we're definitely going to do something live there.
They had Enoch on the Return of the King podcast a while back.
Oh, nice. Did you?
Yeah,
yeah,
dude. He is probably one of the most amazing human beings I've ever met. Like he's I've never met somebody so full of love and joy and just like, he's just such a special guy, man. I'm so glad I became friends with him.
Yeah. And very humble personality too, for being a man of such strong conviction. He's just very humble and laid back to talk with. He was awesome.
Super like good with like, just being a peacemaker and a bridge builder. Like I know that word gets abused by James Martin, but like legit bridge builder, like talks to everybody that's in the Catholic world. He doesn't care if you're a traditionalist. Like he shows respect to everyone he speaks to. I've actually tried to incorporate some of that into the conversations we've been having on our show. It's like, if you believe the Orthodox Catholic faith, I'm not a no salvation outside the Latin Mass guy. Like if you only have a Novus Ordo, that's what you have. But if you believe the Orthodox faith, we're brothers in Christ, and I'm going to try to build a friendship with you if I can.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, Anthony, how long have you been married?
So I'm 42, 18 years was July.
Oh, nice. I'm going on 19 years.
Yeah. It's great,
cool.
Right? You still like each other?
Oh, yeah. She's my best friend.
Dude, so, all right. Me and my wife were talking about this. It's like, we have a bunch of couples that we hang out with where the husbands and wives like each other. Like, that's like the most important thing. Because if you ever hang around a couple where the husband and wife, like, they got crap going on and they don't like each other, like they drag everything down. It's like when I hear a guy talk about his wife, like, oh, my old lady, blah blah blah, things like that, like there's nothing that bothers me more than that. It's like, dude, you should be like courting your wife in 19 years of marriage and still making her feel like you love her and you want to do special things with her. It's such an important thing to like cultivate a romantic marriage for your spouse, for your wife.
I have friends. I mean, now these are secular friends, but they've been married less than a handful of years. They will already start making the jokes about the ball and chain and how they can't go out and do anything. And I tell them, I'm going on 19 years of marriage, and my wife to this day, nothing has changed from when I first met her, which was I met her 23 years ago. We still legitimately love enjoying each other's company and talking about faith and life till late in the night, going for walks. And I always tell them, when people say, well, what's your advice for married couples? At the end of the day, there's a lot of spiritual advice, of course, but the main thing is she's always going to just know she will always be your best friend. You have to
court her, right? And the thing, especially when you have kids, like you have to make sure you set apart time for just the two of you, because like Rob, what you're in right now with the 3 little ones at home, like that's a hard time because your wife is all about the kids, and it's like you get forgotten as a man when your wife has the little ones at home. Like you just don't even exist to your wife when you have little kids at home. So it's like you have to like I remember even when they were little, I remember like calling her parents and be like, hey, can you take the kids tonight? Like I want to take my wife out to dinner. I would get my mom would watch them overnight for us. Like I would always take her out to do little things. Now my kids are older, and me and my wife will go do weekends together. Like we'll go do a weekend, just the two of us. We'll sleep out on. I have a small boat with a camper top on it. It's like this. You can't even sleep 2 people in it. But me and her will go and sleep on it, and just to spend the weekend together.
Half
Is
half an hour
inexpensive.
without mentioning the boat. Good job.
I can't do it.
No, that's good though. I mean, I know for us, I mean, sometimes it's simple things like you said, going for walks or drives where we can pray the rosary together,
Mhm.
talk about legitimate things going on in life, what her thoughts are, what mine are. You know, we discuss it from a faith perspective. Every Sunday after Mass, we always have great discussions on what were your thoughts on the homily. You know, I mean, and one of the blessings with me was when I met her. I mean, I had just reverted to the Catholic faith, or I reverted back. I was 18, and I kind of brought her in that with me. I reverted to the faith, and I met her a month later. And when we were dating, back we were young back then, but I mean, even then, we were going to adoration together. Like every Friday night was
That's
adoration,
awesome.
and yeah. So I mean, that
You
faith has
see,
sustained us.
you can see how, like, look, you reverted, met your wife, and you brought her with you, right?
Yeah.
Like Rob has his reversion, he brings his wife with him. You see, a wife will follow her husband.
Oh
My
yeah.
wife was Lutheran. Once I started learning about the Catholic faith, and like she used to come to church with me and she would receive as a Lutheran, and I was like, not anymore. Like, no. And she was like, oh, wait, this is important. She joins RCIA. She becomes Catholic. It's like, and now my wife's like a traditional, and now she's like instructing the kids. And it's
Yeah.
like, it really is amazing when you see how a woman will naturally follow a man's lead if he's leading her to a good place, you know?
Yeah. So true. And especially when you're a man of conviction,
Yeah.
when it comes to your faith and what you believe, and you're striving to live what you preach, and your example, you know, praying the rosary, going to confession, going to mass. It literally gives wives that much extra confidence that I can trust him where he's leading. And that's
Oh,
the way I think
100%.
it should be. I always say when you look at Ephesians 5, you know, the whole thing about, you know, wives submit to your husbands. And then St. Paul goes on a whole thing about husbands loving their wives the way Christ loved the church. You know, he gives so much substance to that, that if a wife sees her husband loving her the way Christ loves the church, I mean, self-sacrificial love, carrying your cross for her, you know, I mean, literally, then all the more so it's going to give your own wife that much more conviction herself and confidence that I need to submit to his lead. He knows what he's trying to lead me to heaven, you
She'll
know.
want to submit. And like my wife said to me on the last trip we took, like we were just talking, and she's like, I thank God every day that I have the freedom to follow you and to let you lead. Like there's a lot of husbands that don't do that, right? Like if a woman gets a bad husband, like that's why you get a lot of that bickering where the wife is just always mad at the husband and always bickering with the husband and stuff. It's like it's so unnatural. But when a man doesn't have that virtue and he's not, a wife is going to try to be Eve, and she's going to try to
Mhm.
control her husband. You know, it's the same thing with this PA trip. Like it's my wife is just like, yeah, go with your friends. I don't care. Like go and enjoy yourself. Like it's refreshing to be in a marriage with a woman who always naturally follow my lead, and also like can completely trust what I'm doing. She never has to worry about anything. It's great.
Yeah. Wow.
Victor, don't wait, bro. You want to get married? I'm telling you, bro. It's the
Yeah,
greatest thing
hopefully,
ever.
I think this time next year things will be different. Hopefully by then.
Yeah.
They're going well. So.
Nina's gonna
I
flip
always
when
tell
she
guys, I always
watches
tell
this.
guys like don't sweat the financial part. Like just do it and you'll figure it out. Like God will provide. Like you really just God will provide. You'll figure it out.
Yeah, no, thank you for the advice. I think you're right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
I'm listening because I don't have much to add with the fatherhood stuff, but I mean, great advice, and I'll definitely take it all in. Hopefully,
Yeah.
one day I'll join you guys.
Yeah.
yeah, it's like it's I mean, somebody asked the other day, like if you could give your younger self advice, what would you get? I'm like, well, first off, I probably wouldn't listen because I was a stubborn little jerk, you
Hmm.
know. But
Yeah.
like I would have said like because I've been with my wife since like 15. Like we were high school sweethearts, you know.
Yeah.
So like from 15 years old, we were together. I would have just said like, why even wait till 22? Like just get married.
Yeah.
Like it would have just been better, you know.
Well, that was, I mean, our thing. Same thing. We were basically high school sweethearts. By senior year, I mean, I knew she's my future, and I knew, especially by then, this is who God wants me to be with. So when we graduated, I mean, that summer I proposed. We got married the year after. We got married of all places in a small Latin mass chapel, which was
Nice.
even more awesome. But yeah, we got
That's pretty
engaged
cool.
ASAP. Yeah.
Yeah, man, you did it young. That's great. So I knew I wanted to marry my wife, but my wife went away to college in Chicago for the first year. And when she left, she was gone for a month and we didn't see each other for a month. And when I went and visited her that first time, when I laid eyes on her after not seeing her for a month, I was like, oh, we're getting like, there's no way I'm marrying this girl. Like there was something happened to me where I was just like, that's it. No way.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the same with us. Definitely. I knew, I mean, once I knew the thing that clicked with me was she's actually doing her part to lead me to heaven. Like she actually cared about my holiness and my virtue. And I realized I had the same exact for her. And so by that point, it's like, well, why are we going to wait 5, 10, 15 years, whatever, and travel or save money? Or I just knew automatically I got to propose to her. We got to get married. And, we did. And
so you had your conversion senior year or the year after?
For me, it was right at the tail end of my senior year, right at the tail end. And of all places, it was at a prayer conference that was Medjugorje themed at the time.
Yeah.
But I was lost all through high school, even though I was raised Catholic, but I was completely lost. My dad and my godparents were begging me to go to this prayer conference with them. And of all places where I first met Jesse Romero, because he was one of the speakers. And he was a lot younger back then, but I heard him preach and something like lit a fire in me about the Catholic
Dude,
faith.
Jesse is a fire preacher, man.
Oh yeah.
I gave a talk at the Cancel Priest Conference in I guess June, right? June. And of all the speakers there, Jesse's sitting at a table, and Jesse goes to these conferences with his wife.
Yeah.
She travels to every one of them with him. Yeah. And I actually met him in the elevator with his wife, and I was like, do you guys go to all of these together? And he's like, yeah, she's my manager, she goes to everything. I was like, that is such a cool thing that like you guys go and do this, like, because you hear all the time when the husbands, because Jesse speaks all over the place, like he's all over. So we're sitting down in the main like banquet hall where all the talks are being given, and there was a Spanish busboy, and the busboy, he's at a Catholic conference. He doesn't know anybody, but he knows Jesse Romero, dude.
Yeah.
And that kid went over to Jesse, and I saw him talking to Jesse, got Jesse's autograph. And it was like, because Jesse's in the bilingual community, like everybody knows this guy. He's been doing it forever. Like this kid was excited to meet Jesse Romero. Meanwhile, he's at a Catholic conference. He didn't recognize a single other person, but he knew Jesse,
Yeah. Well,
it was a pretty cool thing.
I really lucked out, and it was a blessing from God that when I heard Jesse talk, at the end of that conference, I went to go introduce myself to him, and I was just turning 18. I was young, and Jesse was young, younger at the time. But I introduced myself, and I said, man, I wish I could just have access to your brain and to your faith, as often as possible. He said, where do you live? So I told him. Well, it turned out he was 5 minutes from me where he lived. So he's like, hey, why don't you come over Saturday? We'll have a barbecue and talk. And like that, he and I developed this relationship where I would come over all the time. Well, then in my mid-20s, Jesse's parish at the time, he's at a different one now because he moved to Arizona, but where he was going at the time, he had said, hey, we need a youth minister. If I can recommend you, would you want to come on board full time? And I said, yeah. So then I worked with him for 5 years. We did the confirmation program. We did the baptism classes, weekly Bible studies for the church. We led the confirmation. We did youth ministry. So, I was able to learn a lot from him. And he also has a younger brother named Johnny, who's also like a very fiery type of Catholic evangelist. I got to learn a lot from him, but it was a blessing. I mean, I learned a lot just by hanging out with him.
I'll tell you right now, man, when he gave his talk, because he was the keynote speaker on I think it was the first night. No, the second night, maybe the second night, but whatever. When Jesse gives a keynote, dude, he is like, he knows how to light that room up. I'm talking like multiple standing ovations. He knows how to give a talk, Jesse, man. He's awesome.
I remember when
we have him coming on August 24th. I'm excited for that.
Oh, nice. And I remember when back in my mid-20s when I was doing youth ministry, he tried to get me onto the conference circuit, like at local conferences. the Catholic Answers type stuff, or back then
Yeah.
it was like St. Joseph's Family Conference. He would have me talk to the teens, like to the teen track. And it was funny because I'd never spoken before, like public speaking, so I was really nervous. So I thought I'll just try to copy Jesse. So I would really do my best to try to be all like, and into it, and holding the Bible. And I remember Jesse just laughing, saying, "Joe, just be yourself. Just be yourself and talk to them real." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right."
So listen, this was my first time giving a public talk, right? Like I never gave a public talk before. So I go and I'm like, I just asked Father Laval, I'm like, please do not make me go first. Like, I just don't want to go first. I was like, I don't want to be the first guy because I never did this before. And the last time I had spoke was at my cousin's wedding. And I had to read Ephesians 5 and I choked. Like I just couldn't. I was so mortified at this wedding. And it was like, I had this intense fear that was going to happen again. But I went up and everything was fine. But Kennedy Hall spoke like after I did. And when I saw the way Kennedy Hall had a commanding presence on stage, I was like, I kind of wish he went first because I might have taken a little bit of that to my talk. Like he had a really good commanding presence, Kennedy.
Yeah, well,
You're shaking your head, Rob. Why?
Well, like Joe said, just you were yourself.
Yeah.
Like you're never gonna be Kennedy Hall. You don't have the beard.
Yeah.
That's true.
I just shaved my beard last month. It was down to here. It was
nice.
5.5 inches. And at our local FSSP parish, 3 times people there, including one of the priests, thought I was Kennedy Hall because I had the shaved head and I had the beard. I was in line for confession, and the priest is walking in and saw me and said, "Kennedy Hall?" And I was like, "No, I'm not Kennedy Hall. I'm Joe." And he went to the confessional. But no, I was going to say it's so true. I remember one piece of advice that Jesse gave me years ago was he said, when you're giving a talk, he said, just pretend, don't see the audience. Pretend you're talking to a friend of yours, and that friend just asked you a question, and that question is whatever your topic is. So the friend says, "Hey, tell me why you love your Catholic faith." He said, "What would you tell your friend?" He said, "Now go up there and just talk about what you would tell your friend." And that kind of helped me a lot. I had the same thing with public speaking, which people find crazy now because I talk a lot, but I was terrified of public speaking. And years ago, I was asked to talk. Same thing. I had to read one of the readings at a friend's wedding, and it was 1 Corinthians 13, "The love is patient, love is kind."
Mm-hmm.
I went up there and I literally stuttered for 30 seconds. I couldn't get out the word love.
I did the same thing, dude. It's so funny. I did the same thing.
It was nuts. And to this day, it's on their wedding DVD. And I'm like, oh.
No, my dude, this is my cousin's wedding video. And I'm like, oh no. And then the other time I gave a public speech was at my brother's wedding, the best man speech. And I bombed so bad. Like when I tell you so this one I didn't choke speaking. My joke did not land at all. It was so bad. My sister-in-law to this day is furious with me because I ruined her wedding video. It's so bad.
What was it? Can you say
all right, so I go, I said some nice things about my sister-in-law, and I said like I didn't want to drag it out because there's nothing worse than a long best man speech. Yeah. Like there's really nothing worse than a bad long drag. What?
This might have been worse.
Well, not if you're at the dinner, right? Like if you're at the dinner and it's like, do you remember the maid of honor speech where they're like, you remember the time when we were 10 and we had our Barbie doll? And it's like, dude, just shut up, lady. Nobody knows what you're talking about. You're telling inside stories for 25 minutes. Why are you doing this? People are losing, like the bar is closed right now and you're dragging this on for 20 minutes. What's wrong with you? So I didn't want to be that guy. Like that was all I was worried about. I'm like, I don't want to be that guy. So I go up, I said a few nice things about my sister-in-law. I was like, you guys have been together forever, like because they were high school sweethearts too. I'm like, the good news is what did I say? I was like, the good news is I said, okay, I go, the bad news, because you got to give the bad news first. I go, the bad news is you guys are going to be together for a very long time. You're going to be stuck together for probably 30, 40 years. You're not going to want anything to do with each other after a long time. But the good news is I just saved a boatload of cash by switching to Geico. And I dropped the mic like I killed it. And nobody laughed.
Oh, how are they going to laugh?
Isn't that a good joke?
That's great.
I don't get how I didn't get a laugh. Like, I still think it was funny to this day. I don't get it.
Maybe they're all progressive people.
Tough crowd.
Dude,
It was a very tough crowd. Like, when I tell you not a chuckle Like it was so bad. Oh
Wow.
man, it was like traumatizing though. So, Vic, how did you have your reversion or conversion? Were you cradle Catholic?
Yeah, I was a cradle Catholic. I had some similar experiences to you guys. I kind of left the faith like when I went. I mean, in high school, I wasn't going to mass all the time, but in college, I kind of like left the faith pretty much. Um, my family, like I was raised, I wasn't catechized well, but I went to a good conservative Catholic school. So when I was in like sixth grade, we would go to daily mass, and that was like when I was really probably the closest, like when I was really living out the faith and like was actually like found peace at the mass and like was really enjoying it. But then as I got older, I kind of just fell away. But COVID is really what brought me back. Like, well, prior to COVID, actually, I was engaged once, and when that ended, I was like kind of broken, and I didn't know. I think God kind of gives you crosses in order to bring you back to the faith. But I started going back to Novus Ordo, and then COVID happened, and I found tradition basically when the mass was shut down. I had a good friend who went to the Latin Mass in Virginia, so the rules there were less strict than in Maryland. So I started going to the
I know
Latin Mass.
so many people that have that COVID story, right,
Yeah.
Rob? Like so many people we talked to is COVID hit, and I found tradition. It's so wild. So yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know many other people who became more traditional. I mean, I had more time to learn about the faith and a lot of the disconnects. I think like a lot of the things that were going on in the world were kind of like the way that the church was intertwined with like the World Health Organization and all these different like conspiracy theories. Because I had been a political science major, so like I had been big into like the one world government and then seeing like the one world religion and all these things that were
Yeah.
happening in the church, like all these different like the crisis, like learning about the crisis. I found Taylor Marshall and infiltration.
Everybody's got the Taylor Marshall story.
Yeah, I mean,
We all do. I do too. That's how I found tradition too.
yeah, I mean, he was very instrumental. I mean, I learned a ton. Like also when COVID happened, my work was less busy, so I had a lot of free time to like
Mhm.
to read, to watch YouTube videos, like so yeah, I mean, I really learned a lot about the crisis and getting to the Latin Mass, the two things at once that just kind of clicked. And since then, I mean, I've just really grown tremendously. Like, thank God,
Yeah,
like I've had
it lights a fire in you when you find tradition, right? It's almost like rediscovering like this hidden gem, this pearl of great price that we
It's-
all that we thought was
Especially if you're a
hidden.
cradle Catholic, right?
Yeah.
You realize what was taken from you or kept from you, even if it wasn't done purposefully by certain people. It feels that way.
Yeah, you feel like you were robbed of your birthright. It's a
Yeah.
pretty crazy experience, man. It really is. So, yeah, I think my first Latin mass was actually accidental. It was all right. So after Remorse Laetitia, I get so distraught and beaten down from the just the crap going on in the church. I was just like so distraught. I was like, you know what? I couldn't make sense of like, how does what I was taught about the papacy work with this? Like, I was like, oh man. And I left the faith, and then my whole life started falling apart. Like, even my marriage was getting really dicey, which it never was before. It was a weird time in my marriage. Me and my wife weren't getting along. And I just remember like things got so bad that I was just like, okay, I have to go back to the sacraments. Like, when you leave the sacraments, disorder comes. And I was like, I don't know what you're doing right now, God, but I know the sacraments are real, and I know like this is going to order my life. So I went to go to confession, and I was working a night shift in Manhattan. And I looked up a parish that had confession, and it was like at 5:30 p.m. they had confession, and I wound up going to Holy Innocents. Now, Holy Innocents in Manhattan has confession 3 times a day and Latin mass every day at 6 p.m. It's a diocesan parish that has both forms, but they have confession at like 11 a.m., 1 p.m., and 5 p.m. It's 3 times a day, every day. And so I go to confession at 5:30. I get out and I'm praying my penance in the pew, and all of a sudden I hear a bell ring, and I see everybody stand up, and I don't hear anything. And it's a low mass, and I'm like, what is going on here? Like, I was like, what is this? Like, I'm at some like prayer vigil or something. Like, what's going on? I had no idea what was happening. But by the end of it, I stayed for the whole thing. And by the end, I had just gotten out of confession. So going up to receive, I remember being like, okay, all right, I know I got to kneel and receive. Okay, I guess, there's no receiving in the hand here. Wow, okay. Which I always wanted anyway, right? Like I knew enough, like I didn't want to receive in the hand even before discovering tradition. So I was like, oh, all right, this is cool. But when I got out of there, I remember just being like, I felt so alien, but so at home. It was like, it was a weird thing. It was this weird dichotomy where it was like, I didn't know what was going on, but I felt like I was home. And I go home and I start looking up what is this Latin Mass, and I come across Taylor Marshall, and the Taylor Marshall puts out a challenge during Advent. So it was like a few months in between that first experience and then like listening to Taylor, and then he puts out a challenge and he's like, I challenge everybody during Advent to go to 4 consecutive Latin Masses. And I went to 4 consecutive Latin Masses. And after you go to 4 in a row, when you go back to the Novus Ordo, it's more jarring than your first Latin Mass.
It seems like a whole different world. It's just so different. It's that's been my experience for sure. I mean, I've been Latin Mass for a long, long time, but every now and then, once in a blue moon, my wife and I have gone to a Novus Ordo, either because we're out camping with family.
Yeah, it's your only option.
Yeah, or it's like somebody's wedding in the family, so we go there. It's Novus Ordo. But yeah, I mean, we notice that every single time. It just feels so radically different. And everything from, even the vibe of the whole thing, the noise of the whole thing, or people clapping at times, and so on. It's just so different. We go to one where the priest before the homily comes out and says, "Whose birthday is it?" and starts singing "Happy Birthday," and it's such a different world. It's like a culture shock. It's when all you've known for a long time is the Latin Mass. Yeah. So like you said,
it's a show. It's a strange thing, man. I'm telling you. All right. So we have Trent Horn coming on Tuesday, and I'm friends with. Wait, what'd you say?
Moon landing or what?
No, I may bring it up. I may bring it up only because Trent has he has some very it's weird the things that he's very firm about, right? Like this whole thing started because Trent was defending the DJ priest. And I put it out and I was like after seeing Pachamama, why are we surprised people are defending devil worship? I was being hyperbolic. I didn't think it was actual devil worship or anything, but he jumped in to defend it. And I'm like, man, the things that you defend, and then you come down on Taylor Marshall for the moon landing. It's so he says what did he say? He was like, I think that people that have very big platforms like Taylor Marshall shouldn't be pushing the moon landings, the moon conspiracy, because there could be non-Catholics looking on that are interested in Catholicism, and they'll think we're kooks and crazy and stuff. And I'm like, but what about the Protestants that are looking in, that already have the perception that Catholics are pagan, and they look at that why is that not scandalous for the Protestant? Right. But the moon landing is because I'll tell you, the moon landing thing, obviously none of us know, right? But there's after the past 6-7 years, it's I kind of question everything from the government at this point.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I don't believe anything they tell me. Yeah. So a lot of it is really coming from the perspective of just distrust in authority, right? So I understand where Trent's coming from with that. It's you don't want to just distrust everything just for the sake of it. There's good evidence to say that if it was fake, the Russians would have pulled the lid off of that thing. But at the same time, you see things when the moon lander was going back up to the main shuttle, there's no flames coming out of it. It's what kind of technology do we have back in 1969 that could happen? Then they talk about this
flames in space, Anthony.
Oh no? So how did it? Oh, okay. I didn't know that. You wouldn't have flames coming out of the thrusters?
No, there's no oxygen.
Right, so that knocks that conspiracy out. Then there's a layer of radiation around the Earth that to this day you'll hear astronauts talk about we're still working on figuring out getting beyond this layer of radiation. And it's I don't know. Listen, I don't care either way. I don't think about it. I'm just saying, I just distrust everything the government tells me. It's I don't believe the 9/11 narrative anymore. I'm not saying it was planned but I just don't believe anything. I think every narrative serves a purpose, and I can't believe how naive I was to believe every single thing I was told before Trump. Trump broke everything, right?
Yep.
Trump broke everything. It's so great because they just drop their masks on everything. And it's like, if nothing else, the guy took away all of the pretense that was there, like the facade that was there. It's like all of that is just gone now. It's like, okay, they're lying to me about everything.
Yeah.
You guys
Interesting
red
times we live in, boys.
black
At least
pill?
they'll never be able to say we lived in boring times, right?
What'd you
Yeah.
say, Victor?
No, I was wondering if you guys are red pilled or black pilled. What do you think about the coming election? Are you guys going to you planning to vote, or are you going to sit it out?
I'm not voting. No. It's not apathy in my case. Like, in my opinion, I think the best thing for the common good, as far as I can see, is if the whole facade, the whole system needs to be changed. And I don't see that being accomplished by whether we vote in a Republican or a Democrat, no matter who they are. So in my opinion, I think the best way to change the system is to have just have no one participate in just not care.
Well, what about
So-
isn't Taylor Marshall's running this year, right?
Yeah.
No.
I think our best
No.
bet is to convince Taylor and some wealthy donors and let's buy some land and start a Catholic country somewhere, like the Amish.
Right.
Yeah, but dude, you got to worry about that because every time you do that, it turns into a cult.
Yeah.
Like every time, right? Like it's like you always turn it into a cult. Anytime you see any group of a religion try to do something like that, it just becomes a cult. You saw it even down in Texas. They were doing
that Veritas Splendor community.
The Veritas Splendor community.
Oh, I didn't hear
And you had the people that were organizing it. They were both married and they had an affair together. They both cheated on their spouses and they had an affair together. And it's like there's always shady stuff going on with those things. So the thing is, oh man, I have two minds about it. One is what Rob said, like it needs to come down. Like there has to be a death so there could be a resurrection. Something new needs to come from this. And the same thing with the church. Like the church, a lot of people get like anxious about the synod and stuff.
Yeah.
But in a way, I'm kind of like, yeah, bring the synod. Let them try to do something crazy because the whole thing needs to come down. The facade needs to come down so that a death can happen. So that and we know the church is going to follow our Lord in his passion, death, and resurrection. Like I want to see the glorious resurrection. So whatever events have to happen for that to transpire, let them happen. Let them come. Let's go. Let's see the resurrection. I want to see it. So, but it's the same thing with the country. But at the same time, if it is possible for Trump to get back in, I miss that man's humor. I do. He was funny as anything. I mean, he put out a tweet about a truth about Chris Christie today about him being a fat pig, and it just made me laugh. But also, he'll like if it's like even theoretically possible for him to get in and fire the deep state, like they would lose their minds. It would be an amazing thing to see. I just don't know if it's possible. Like they'd probably pull a JFK on him before they ever allowed it to happen.
Even if it's not, I think just him potentially being in. Even if he does nothing, like you said, he breaks people.
He's hilarious too.
So
he does break people. Yeah. No, you're right. Like think about what they did when he got in, man. Like they lost
think
their
what
minds.
They're doing now. They've arrested the leading candidate for one of the two political parties in the country. Like that's some Soviet level, BS right there.
Dude, you have to really think about something. They framed a sitting president.
And
like
admitted it. And everyone knows it, and no one cares. You know what I mean?
They knew there was no Russian collusion. Like they knowingly framed him for freaking treason. It's like,
but didn't one of the FBI agents that investigated the collusion just get charged with treason or not treason,
faking the dossier or something? And honestly, I'm at the point now where I just don't care about politics. Like I just don't care. It's just irrelevant to me. We don't talk about them on our show generally. Like, I mean, if something in the culture happens, we'll talk about it. But like him and I both just don't care. It's like
my issue is I don't really trust anybody at the top of those parties.
Right.
Personally, I really don't. Like I heard it said, it's a big club and they're all in it. Kind of a thing, George Carlin. So I don't trust it myself. But it's funny because in 2016, when it was Trump versus Hillary, a buddy of mine from Ohio and I started talking. He said, let's just run as independents against them. So we actually did. I was actually ran as a vice president, an independent against Trump and Hillary. So people that year were like, who are you voting for? Are you going to vote for Trump? And I said, no, forget that guy. I'm voting for myself.
All right, but wait a minute. you got to think back to election night 2016.
Mhm.
Oh, that
Like,
was
it was that not one of the most glorious days of your life? Like, it really
Well,
was.
I was hoping
Dude, you
I'd hear
gotta
my name, but I didn't. So
there's a documentary that goes through because they thought Hillary had it in the bag. So not Stars, it was Showtime, did this whole documentary. They were following both candidates around. Hillary's got the glass ceiling
Glass
set up.
ceiling.
Dude, they thought she had it in the, like, they didn't even consider the possibility that Trump could win.
yeah,
When they started seeing, dude, that room where Hillary was supposed to come out, and like when you start seeing them early in the night, they're all dancing, they're all excited, they're like, yeah, we're gonna break that glass ceiling, they're all happy. As the night drags on, you just see the mood sinking. As by the end of the night, they're all like, no! They're free. Dude, it was just such an amazing moment in history. I remember I had work the next day and I stayed up till 2 a.m. because I kept saying, this can't be real. Like, there's no way they're going to do something to take it away. There's no way. Like, there's no way. And it was a weird thing because it made you feel like, oh, wait, maybe elections are legit. Like, because you didn't think he was ever going to win. And then 2020 happened. And we're like, oh, that's the reality.
yeah. Well, the funny thing is when we ran it in we after the election, after all that kind of simmers down, you get in the mail your actual poll, like your results and the popular vote, how you did. And with us, we had 12 votes in California, which I thought were just maybe my family. And we actually trended fairly well of all places in I think it was like Wisconsin, Alaska, and in Ohio we were sixth behind the other candidates, behind like the Republican, Democrat, Green, Libertarian. Like we were sixth on there, but
How
when
did you get on the
2020
ballot?
Oh, it was just a lot of, I mean, really it was to the other guy that did the bulk of it, just campaigning. He actually had a camper that he drove around across the country for a year, going into like local diners and stuff, or, pubs, even just giving flyers out and talking about the campaign and going Instagram live and Facebook live to promote it. But you have to get so many signatures to be on a ballot.
That's what I mean.
It's a lot easier to be a write-in. So we were like on the ballot in a handful of states that were easier to get on. In the other states, we were just like official write-ins. Like California, we weren't on the ballot, just official write-in,
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
It's
that
pretty
was my
funny.
little adventure in politics. Never again. So
Yeah, that night, man, holy cow, that was one for the history. But like, it still like felt so surreal to win. Like,
yeah.
you're so used to losing after going through the Obama presidency. Like, you were just so used to getting beaten down and losing everything that to get a win, you really did think like, oh man, maybe we have a chance to push back against this nonsense that's going on. And then his entire presidency was just the most insane 4 years in American history. That ended with the culmination of 2020. Like, holy crap, man, you forget what we lived through the last couple of years. It's like, it really is insane. 2020 was the most surreal experience of any of our lives. You'll remember it for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Yep. I think
so
the Supreme Court was almost worth it, though. I mean, although his presidency was far from perfect, I think getting the judges on and overturning Roe v. Wade, it almost
Yeah, but
makes me want to vote for him again.
even the Roe v. Wade thing, though, like, you look at like how Republicans just destroyed the momentum, right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, great, we got Roe v. Wade, and every single state doubled down and made it the abortion laws even worse than they were. It's like a couple of states, Texas went good, and Florida put in a 6-week ban, I think, and a couple of places did good, but everywhere else it was like, no, child killing at this point, like post birth.
Yeah, I mean, we're in New York and Maryland and I think Minnesota as well, right? But
Yeah,
a lot of the
Vermont's horrible. New York, I mean, I live in New York, bro. It's literally the infanticide capital of the world.
Yeah, it's
crazy.
pretty terrible.
Well, I'm on the opposite in California. It's the same thing. It's very, very pro-abortion in California.
Where in Cali are you?
Near Los Angeles, San Fernando Valley, about maybe 40 miles from Los Angeles or so, 20 miles.
And what's it like? Like, all right, so I'm in New York, but I'm on Long Island, right? So like, I don't live in I'm in a very conservative area. Like that, like all my neighbors I got Trump signs all over in my neighborhood and stuff already. It's like, and even our schools aren't bad and stuff like that. Like, there's none of that woke stuff in my schools on Long Island at all. So it's like, where I am, I feel like I'm in this little enclave. I work in the city, and the city is mayhem. Like, you have no idea what I deal with in the city, especially in people are just so disordered in the city. But on Long Island, it's really not bad at all.
Yeah, I mean, my area feels just very, very overly far left, progressive, liberal for
That's
the most
harsh.
part. We have Governor Newsom, and I mean, I remember like even during the elections, the signs that I see are, Biden or like Bernie Sanders, like that type of stuff. I mean, that seems to be all over the
Why
place.
don't you go up towards like Orange County or anything? You have your job committed where you are?
Yeah, part of it's that, part of it's family. My wife and I, we don't have children, unfortunately, by God's design. I mean, we have three babies that were miscarried, and Luke and
Yeah.
Hannah.
Mm.
But my
It's
brother,
such a
you know,
it's such a weird thing as a Catholic, right? Because I only have three. So it's a weird thing as a Catholic to say I don't have kids or I only have three kids because everybody right away just assumes, oh, what are you using birth control or something? It's like,
exactly.
no, it's just that's how things go sometimes. It's
Yeah.
always a weird conversation.
Oh yeah, we've had that many, many times. When people ask us how many kids do you have, and we
Yeah.
say, well, we don't have any here. We always say here, we don't have any
Yeah.
here in this world. And but that's the first thought is like, oh, but you're Catholic. And then we have
Yeah.
to explain to them, we had three. We say, God took them from the womb early, but and Luke and Hannah. But that's one of the crosses God asked us to carry. We feel,
Yeah.
because God knows we have been open to life since the day we
Yeah,
were
of
married.
course.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we've always been very pro-life. We've done walks for life. We protest in front of abortion clinics and pray. And we got married, and the first thing was like we want to start having a large family. But instead, we've had the three miscarriages. But in lieu of that, it's like my brother has my nephew and my niece, Maddox and Olive. My sister-in-law, also my goddaughter, she has Roman, who's my nephew, and we're just so bonded to these kids.
Yeah.
So, and that's the hardship for me of moving is they're all at ages where they're just starting to grow up. Preschool,
Yeah.
kindergarten. They're so connected to us, and we want to be a part of their lives. So that
Yeah,
kind of
Joe,
keeps us where we are.
fatherhood is not like anybody can have offspring, right? It doesn't make you a father. Like, I mean, yeah, I guess like genetically, but like it's something I've really been focusing on a lot is like fatherhood is a spiritual thing. So if you have nephews in your life that like you are a father figure to those kids. Like you are, I even consider myself a father figure to some of the younger guys I work with. I really do. Like these are like I got guys in their late 20s, early 30s that I always try to like be a mentor to them to not give them the same nonsense they're hearing from the other guys at work who are whistling at chicks on the street. Like I talk to these guys about custody of the eyes and things like that, and they're like they really do, and it's funny. Like they know when Anthony's around, it's like, oh man, be careful. You're gonna get a lecture. You're gonna get a lecture. It's like.
Well, interestingly enough, with spiritual fatherhood, my wife and I together have, I think if we counted correctly, it's 22 or 23 god kids.
Wow.
Yeah.
So something around that number. But so we try to keep connected to them, especially just through prayers. Some of them we're very close to. Others, have moved into other parts of the country, and we just kind of check up every now and then. But that's also important to us is our role in their lives. And so my wife and I make up the time. We don't have children here, but we do spend a lot of time with like our nephews, our nieces, make time for our god kids, be available to our families, and especially the works of mercy is very important to us. I mean, we figure God has given us that time. We don't have the responsibility of kids. So, what are we doing with our time to go maybe pray at a cemetery, pray a rosary at an abortion clinic, go to adoration, go to an extra mass, help, buy some food for someone hungry and in need down the street. So we try to fill it up.
Well, I would also say because you don't have any kids, it kind of puts you in a unique position where you don't have like it's not like you're raising your kids in a liberal cesspool.
Yeah.
Like you don't have that to deal with. So it's like as adults, it's like as long as you're safe, you can stay where you are. And it's if there's ever an emergency, you and your wife have the ability to pick up and go. It is what it is. It's like so yeah, I definitely understand. For me, it's I don't want to leave New York because I have 8 siblings. We're a very close family, very close. Like I work with every one of my brothers. So I have 4 brothers. All 4 of us work at the same company, which keeps us all local.
Yeah.
And my parents are here. My wife's parents are here. Her sisters are here. So it's like my kids all grow up with their cousins. Like, and I grew up with my cousins, and that is such a unique thing to have a big family with a ton of cousins that every time we get together, my kids have all this family around them. You don't want to yank them away from that. It's a very tough thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. My sister-in-law's kid Roman, who's about 1.5, he just basically is now learning my name. I mean, he's my godson, so he calls me, in Spanish, it's Nino for Godfather. So he calls me Neen or Neens. And so he just learned that like in the last 2 weeks. It's like a big
it's
thrill
like
for
heart
me.
melting.
I walk in the door and he just runs to me, Neens, and like stuff like
Dude,
that.
you got to freak when you see that.
Oh yeah. I'll have to post a video. So but I was gonna say, if you guys want, we could try one of these.
Yeah, we can do it. I'm sorry, dude.
topics
I sometimes I get carried away in conversation and stuff. It's
Oh no, that's all good.
3-hour podcast. I feel bad cutting you off.
Dude, this
Sometimes.
is what poor Rob deals with almost every episode. It's like, but I think it's like, it's funny because if you look at what actually people actually enjoy, look at the podcast that people are enjoying. It's the conversations that Joe Rogan's having, right? It's like people want to hear these natural conversations between Catholic guys that are just talking, and it's not this. It doesn't have to be about a news event, but you can be. But I'm saying, like what we did tonight, I think people will enjoy more than discussing a news topic. Like this was just 4 guys getting to know each other, hearing their faith journeys and how they're going about their lives under the current crisis that we're all facing right now.
Yeah, it's too bad we couldn't have done it on YouTube Live, but maybe next time we'll
the audience would have loved this. They'd have been commenting on everything, but it was still great. So yeah, pull one out. Let's see.
Okay, the first one is: would you rather have lunch with Martin Luther or Pope Francis? That's the first one.
Do I speak their language?
Yes. You can communicate.
Okay, so they speak. We'll say they speak English, right?
Yeah.
Pope Francis.
At least he can give me a blessing. Hear my confession.
But then again, do you think you could talk Martin Luther out of it?
Yeah.
You're not going back in time. You're eating lunch with the guy.
Yeah, but that's the what do you mean? It's hypothetical. We're saying, am I going back in time to talk to Martin Luther?
Before the 95 thesis or after?
Before the 95? No, after even, but before the split. Like before it really.
With Francis, though, you could go through every one of his airplane interviews and be like, "Did you really mean this way? Okay, how about this?
Yeah,
one?
I want
how
Francis.
about this one?
I want Francis. Martin Luther, if it's before the 95 Theses, do you slip a strychnine pill in his lunch and save the church from splitting?
With Francis, you could ask him,
God.
When you said the middle finger is the finger of honesty, did you know what you were doing?
He probably did. The Martin Luther thing is kind of like it's like the hypothetical. Is it like if you could go back and get baby Hitler? It's like you really can't, right? The ends don't justify the means, so you can't just take an innocent baby at that point. But Martin Luther, before he nails the 95 Theses, I don't know, man. I might break his hand so he can't write them. Let's do another one. These are good questions.
All right. Well, this one is: which one is your favorite Marian apparition of all the approved ones? Which is your favorite?
Fatima.
I know everybody says Fatima. Let me think.
Yeah. And I will say
Akita.
Everyone does say Fatima, but Fatima's probably mine as well. It's the one I've studied the most and been most.
Here's why I'm going to go with Akita. We actually got the message.
Yeah. So true.
Like we actually got the message of Nikita, where Fatima, it's like there's so much mystery around it, but it's such a great event because the reason I love Fatima is because you can actually point a person seeking the truth to go, hey, look, dude, go back and look up Fatima. Like there's 70,000 people that saw this thing. Some were secularists. You can look at the newspaper articles. Look at how many atheists went there and communists went there and they saw this thing happen. So that's why Fatima really is an amazing thing. Plus Fatima is tied into my conversion a lot, like on that learning experience. And
I was in a Fatima cadet youth group growing up and did first Saturdays for probably 10 to 15 years of my life. So I got to say
that's
Fatima.
awesome.
Yeah. I mean, being Portuguese, I have to say Fatima as well. I think the message is really impactful, just reparation, penance, for things against the Sacred Heart of Mary. Just praying the rosary has been one of the most important devotions for me. But La Salette, I think I would probably say I like Akita.
That's a good one.
Yeah, La Salette.
That's a good one, La Salette, especially for our current times.
Good success too, like with the prophecy. So many of the prophecies.
I think those are the four for me: Akita, Good Success, La Salette, and Fatima. But
I can't believe none of you guys said Medjugorje. which is ironic because like my family has such a connection to it. But even my parents that went, like my parents went, my dad's rosary beads turned gold. They had some crazy pictures they took with Jesus's face in the clouds and stuff. But even my parents that went, like my mom will say, look, I think God can write straight with crooked lines. Like she's not so sure about those apparitions. My mom's not like a Medjugorje devotee or anything. She just thinks at that time in my father's life, he needed to get something like that. And God used what he used, you know? So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, and that's true because I've always said that whatever one's thoughts on Medjugorje, I mean, God used it in my conversion or my reversion. I mean,
there's tons of people have conversions there, man.
Yeah. So, I mean, he at least used it that much insofar as me reverting back to the faith because it was through a Medjugorje peace conference.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, yeah, I agree. But I like how Vic gave the Mount Rushmore of Marian apparitions. The 4 images.
Kennedy Hall has the best joke about that. Like we were talking the other day, Medjugorje came up. He goes, "Well, Mary's a little jealous about Medjugorje." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, she's never been there."
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. So here's another one.
One more.
When the rapture happens, will you be left behind?
Oh man.
I got news for you boys. We've all already been left behind. It happened. That's funny though, because there's so many good jokes with Left Behind because there are so many Protestants that believe it.
Yeah.
Like there are so many Protestants that really believe they're going to be taken up and lifted up into the sky before the Great Tribulation happens. And I'm like, guys, we're in the Great Tribulation right now. I don't know what you're thinking. Yeah. It's weird, right? Because Protestant understanding of the end times is so drastically different from ours. It's like, like for us, we have this understanding that the church has to suffer and follow our Lord in his passion, death, and resurrection. So for us to see these things happen in the church, it almost is a comfort to know that, okay, these things have to happen. I don't think any of us ever expected it to happen from inside the church. I think all of us always expected it to be persecution from without. But I think, especially over the last year or so, I've really started to understand that the mystery of iniquity really is about people that wish to still be called Catholic, but aren't actually Catholic in faith. Like the great apostasy is about people within the church who wish to still be called Catholic, apostatizing from the faith.
Wow.
Rob's not crazy about that, but that's my
No. I think the general principles are fine. Just sometimes you use language and it's like,
I use a little language. We're not going to say that anyway.
No, I think I do agree. I think we're in the great apostasy now. You know, I think what we're seeing. Too. I think La Salette, I mean, some of it, I guess, was unapproved, some of the messages, but that's what you hear in La Salette. Right?
Well, you also have to, okay, so like part of it says like Rome will become the seat of the Antichrist, right? That doesn't mean the Roman Catholic Church. It means the city of Rome, it could mean, right? Like, I don't believe the Pope won't be the Antichrist. You have to really, if you read all the saints and the fathers, they all say the Pope will never be the Antichrist. Yeah. But if you look through typology and you see kind of what happens in the Old Covenant, what you see is, especially we hammered this out with Joshua Charles and Michael Hitchborn when they were on. If you look to the high priesthood of Jason and what's his brother's name?
You always forget.
I forget. So anyway, what they do is Jason was not really a high priest, and then his brother
Maccabees.
In Maccabees, the story of Maccabees, and Antiochus Epiphanes is generally throughout church history has always been seen as a type of the Antichrist. And what happens is Jason, who's a false high priest, brings Antiochus Epiphanes into the temple. So what you might see is a shady pope bring the Antichrist and some kind of desolation of abomination into the church somehow, and then that person will be the Antichrist. We don't know when that's going to happen. We don't know if it's happened. We don't know any of that. But it won't be a pope himself who is the Antichrist.
In Rome can mean so many things. I mean, if you're thinking
spiritual Rome
as the political unit, one could argue the European Union is the successor to the Holy Roman Empire or something. So,
well, that's the idea behind avoiding Babylon, right? Like we know Babylon will return. Right. And you see, like in the apocalypse, the horror of Babylon, and Babylon returns. So the idea is avoid this. Babylon is a system of control. It's the beast system of control. So avoid their system of control is the idea behind the channel.
Yeah, and by the way, it's I agree that one thing too when you're studying eschatology, you won't find any saint or mystic in any way talking about a pope being the antichrist. So
You
that's just
won't.
not true whatsoever.
And not only will you not find one speaking about it, you find almost all of the saints, especially Saint Robert Bellarmine and maybe it's the Sales or something, or they always will fight against it, like and saying no, it cannot be a pope. Like
And the fathers are pretty universal on some very specific things that we probably don't want to mention on YouTube.
A person of the old covenant.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's that I've heard that before. Is that true?
Yeah, it'll be a person of the we call them Amish. That's code word for us. We just say Amish.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good code word.
Because they're never gonna watch.
Yeah.
And
they're never going to complain. Nobody's going to say anything. So we just say Amish. There's nobody cares if you insult the Amish.
Oh man, that's good. Yeah, no, one thing too to add about the rapture thing, it's funny how the thing I think of is our Lord talks about during the tribulation, he said that the Father, in a sense, would shorten the days for the sake of the elect. But to rapturists, they will say, well, no, the elect are rescued prior to any tribulation. They always invert the passages.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
180. The whole thing about two will be at grinding at the mill and one will be taken, one left behind. And it says that as in the days of Noah. And of course, in the days of Noah, the ones that are left are the ones that are saved. That's Noah and his family. The ones taken are taken to perdition by the waters of the flood. So they always kind of invert what the passage means to promote the rapture theory.
And so much of that is describing the temple's destruction in 70 AD, right? So it's like there were no Christians killed in the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, because by that point, after the desolation of abomination, Christians had a sufficient understanding of the Eucharistic kingdom and the Eucharist being the new sacrifice of the new covenant. And they didn't need to go to the temple anymore. So Christians weren't celebrating in the temple when all that mayhem was going on. So...
yeah, man, I really hate cutting it short, but
no, you got work, bro. This is a fun show, man. You guys are great.
Thanks. Yeah, this was fun. We gotta, well, hopefully we have you guys on again, or vice versa, whatever. But let's do more of these, especially because I have 40 more of these to draw from.
Yeah, maybe we'll get you guys on our show and you can bring your hat.
Nice. That would be a fun off the rails episode.
It would, yeah,
that'd be great. Love to come on.
Keep those handy and we'll have you guys on our channel. So August is totally booked up. September, the first 2 weeks are booked up. So it would have to be like the third week or fourth week of. So it's crazy how much guests are easier to get now. It's like early on, you have no idea how hard it was to get guests in those early days, man. It was so hard. Now, we kind of got a reputation, and it's we'll ask people. They may not say yes right away, but then they ask around a little, and they're like, "All right, well, come on." So we got some good shows lined up.
That's cool. Yeah, let us know. I mean, my calendar's open as far as like mid to late September.
Yeah, that would work well. Let's do it.
Yeah.
We could always get them on the next trivia.
Message me on
episode,
Twitter
too.
over Instagram. I don't check Instagram that often. So it's sometimes you guys will message me and I don't see it for 2 days. But if on Twitter, I pretty much check Twitter daily. So it's a better place to message me. Vic, are you on Twitter?
No, I'm not. I should get back on, but I've been off for a while.
It might be best to stay off.
Yeah, don't go back on.
Yeah.
No, we'll do when we end the stream. When we end the stream, I'll give you guys my phone number. You guys can just text me.
Cool.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Let's go ahead and end it so we get your phone number.
Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah, thank you everyone for watching. Have a great rest of your day.